He graced the world for 96 winters. The stories of Nelson Mandela will be told and retold again and again in the coming weeks. Even just the last 2 days, post after post on Facebook and media of all sorts by folks of every generation have appeared and have made it clear that we are the lucky ones, you and I. That we were lucky enough to share this planet and its air with a truly great man. One I would call an Advent man. Today's scriptures tell of another truly great man whose name was John. John the Baptizer, they called him. In the history of our faith and of our world, he too was the Advent man. He lived in the world painfully aware of the deserts of the world in which he lived, of the deserts in which people he loved were forced to live. Like Moses before him, like Mandela after him, he lived with one eye on the suffering of people he loved, and the other eye on this horizon of freedom from that which keeps people bound and gagged. In the spirit of John comes this new Advent man. Like Moses, who looked out and saw the slavery of his own people, people he loved, under the oppression of the Egyptians, the victors. And like John himself, who looked out at the oppression of his own people, the people he loved, under the oppression of the Roman Empire, another victor. And now comes Mandela, who looked out from his own room, through the windows of his own home, and knew himself in his own bones, he did, the oppression of his own people under a rule of government called apartheid. And like John before him, this John the Baptizer, he insisted, Mandela did, he insisted that we not make this all about him, but that we rather make this about our lives, and we make this about our relationship to our world. And for this reason alone, the stories must be told and told again, because the world must hear that, and the world must know, because of him and those who preceded him, that we don't have to be perfect human beings, that we don't have to be born a different way than everybody else to have an impact. As a matter of fact, we can be born far from those advantages. But if we're willing to suffer and wait and suffer again and wait still longer with an unyielding hope that freedom is possible, that freedom is coming, that you and I can do things now that can begin to help people get out from under what is keeping them from flourishing, what is keeping them from being all they in their turn can be for the world. Henry David Thoreau once observed, most men lead lives of quiet desperation. Most women and men, he observed, live lives of quiet desperation. Desperation doesn't describe people who are suffering and oppressed at all. What desperation describes is a people who are caught up in lives that are all about themselves and their own small worlds. desperation lives are lives that are lived by people who live all about themselves and all about their small worlds, their unmet needs, their sniffles and their pains, and even just their own spouses and their own kids and their own jobs and their own well-being. How do I look? Am I too fat? Am I too bald? Oh my gosh, I'm having such a terrible day because this is broken or that's not working or this person is ignoring me and my steak is too rare and the service here is terrible and my grass is too long and ... I can hardly imagine a life more boring, uninteresting, and uninspired than our lives when we live that way. I can hardly imagine a life more desperate. What makes this world great, what makes this life beautiful, is that there are women who have not made their lives small over the years, but who care more about others and helping others get out from under their oppressions so that they can be free. And they're willing to suffer for that, and wait for that, and suffer again, and wait still longer, with the sure and certain hope that freedom is possible, that freedom is coming. As a matter of fact, freedom is coming for them. I do not say any of this to shame you in any way for the life you have lived, nor myself. I am not saying this for shame's sake, but rather to remind each of us, you and me, that this life is possible still for us. To remind us that what human beings are capable of doing is having an impact on others. That if we live not just for ourselves and our own, but to help others, freedom will come. I propose to you this morning that it was that desire to help others that kept him alive for 27 years in a prison cell. And it was that desire to help others that kept him from being bitter, and leave prison like so many others leave prison, that kept him from being bitter those 27 years. What kept him alive, what kept him from bitterness, was that he cared. I will not give one story, really, in this reflection about the man's life, this Advent man who lived in our own day, who walked our own earth along with us, who breathed the air you and I breathe day in and day out right alongside of us. You will have plenty of those stories in the days to come before his funeral this week. I'm sure of that. I will only say to you what I have said to myself since I had the experience the summer before last of almost feeling like I met him by walking in his shoes those days. I will only say to you what I have said to myself, that this man lived. This imperfect man lived. And as truly as I live, he lived. And as imperfectly as I live, he lived. No life of quiet desperation here, because of his love and because of his hope. And before he breathed his last bit of the air we breathe, this imperfect human being reminded me that perhaps, and maybe he could remind you of this as well, that if we quit worrying about ourselves all the time, and if we let ourselves look out at the needs of this world, we will be moved to do something, anything to help. It can be done. This life can be lived that way by none other than myself. Can it be done? We need more Advent women. We need more Advent men like that, who will look beyond their own small worlds to see, to let themselves see the burdens others carry, the burdens others live beneath, and who will just let themselves care. I believe with all my heart that the difference between his life and our lives of perhaps quiet desperation was that somewhere in those 96 winters, he began to let himself care.